Konnichiwa, courageous forgers. This is our 16th Forge Compendium video. We are going to cover making a cover for our bladed weapons. This video is the 8th in a long series about making weapons. Through these videos we'll be making a pair of nada, but all these lessons can be used in making all bladed weapons. Weapon covers are vital to the safety of a weapon. You wouldn't want to get hit by an uncovered weapon, it hurts. This process is more art than science, so please pay attention. What you will need to sew a cover for a weapon: a sewing machine and all of its needs, and Stretch Sateen fabric. You will also need scissors, cloth tape, and measuring tape. What is Stretch Sateen? It's not satin, to be sure. It is a sportswear fabric that has 3 unique properties. 1. It's thick. Thicker than shield cloth. It needs to take a tumble or two. 2. It stretches, but only one way. This is very important. 3. Both sides of the fabric are different. We'll talk more about this later. Step 1 is to measure the fabric. Take your measuring tape and measure the perimeter of the weapon. Make sure you start at a corner to get an accurate measure. We can see here that my one-sided nada is 8 inches around. To compensate for hems and such, we add 0.5 inches to the perimeter. In total, we would need a strip of cloth 8.5 inches wide to cover. It is important to measure and cut the correct side of the fabric. Remember when I said that this fabric stretches only one way? Well, let's make sure we cut the fabric so it stretches horizontally. Here we measure out 8.5 inches on the Stretch Sateen and make a cut. And to the chagrin of all competent sewers, let her rip. Tearing this way saves time, but you lose some accuracy. Now we have our width cut, we need to get the length cut. Put the fabric edge against the tip of the weapon and measure down. When you get to the bottom, add an extra 3 inches. Cut there. There we go, you have your first cover. Now it's time to sew. Let's fold the cover hot dog ways, but there is a catch. Remember when I said the fabric has different sides? Which side of the fabric goes inside? Look at the fabric in the light. One side is shinier than the other. That shiny side goes inside the hot dog. That will be the outside cover. Step 2 is to sew the cover. The first stitch is long ways straight up the back of the hot dog. Line up the fabric to the edge of the foot. That's about 1/4 inch. Start the straight stitch, being mindful to keep the 2 layers even. Periodically I lift up the layers and manually line them up. At the top, do a little reverse stitch to seal the stitch. The next stitch is another straight one, this time right across the top. Do this one as close to the edge as you can, and do another reverse stitch at the end. Here is where easy turns into art. We need to sew the cover to form fit to the weapon. This requires 2 curved stitches that are different from one another. But there is more to consider, especially with double-sided weapons. For one-sided, we do 2 different stitches. For double-sided, we do one stitch 2 times. Let's start on the back of the one-sided blade. Start your stitch in the middle of the straight top stitch. This is where we'll start all stitches from now on. Start sewing, and when you get to the midpoint between the start of the stitch and the end of the fabric, you want to start turning the fabric 45 degrees while stitching. This gives you a gentle arc between the top stitch and the back stitch. You want to end the stitch on the other side of the back stitch. Then, to reinforce that stitch, we do it once more over the top. Here, look. Now we do the front. This is almost the same stitch as the back, but instead of 45 degrees, we turn 90. Here, we start again in the middle of the top stitch. Sew until you get to the midpoint between where you started and the edge of the fabric. Start to gently turn the fabric 90 degrees. The end of the stitch should end as close to the edge as possible. Once more, to reinforce and to demonstrate, go over the stitch again. And there we go, that's our first sewn cover. Let's flip it inside out and fit it to the blade. Before we do that, let's look into how a double-sided blade is different. Both sides are blade sides, and instead of doing a back stitch and a blade stitch like in a one-sided, we do blade stitches on both sides. This is what that looks like. Remember, this is a 90-degree turn on both sides. When done, let's turn it inside out to fit it to the blade. On one-sided blades, the stitch part goes on the back of the blade. Slide the cover on. It could be a little tight at the top, but it fits. Make sure the cover is all the way down and smooth for the next step. We now want to trim the bottom of the cover. Wrap one rotation of cloth tape around the base of the blade. This will keep the cover supported while we trim. Take some scissors or a razor and trim along the base of the blade. Get the fabric as close as you can, or you may mess up the cover. Tear off strips of cloth tape and place as such. You want these strips long enough to cover the bottom and to go over the lip of the blade by at least half an inch on both sides. After covering all the foam, do one more full rotation around the blade. The very last step of a weapon cover is to mark the back of the blade. This is only for one-sided weapons. A foot-long silver piece of duct tape is good. Place as shown. And there you go. You covered your first blade. Happy forging. Okay, now let's get this going.